All right, let's jump right into this explainer because today we're unpacking a wildly unexpected truth about the Spanish Inquisition and their deeply paradoxical relationship with the occult. Most of us have a very specific, frankly terrifying image in our heads when we think of the Inquisition, right? But today we're digging into the actual historical records to reveal a totally different story. We're going to explore how an institution famous for publicly destroying forbidden books was, behind closed doors, secretly hoarding dark grimoires in their highly secure archives.
To start, we really need to shatter our preconceived notions and ask a seemingly impossible question. How could a holy institution inadvertently become the protector of the very demonic texts it was trying to wipe out? It's a core mystery that completely flips our understanding of medieval and early modern history. We're going to see exactly why they meticulously catalog demonology instead of just purging it from existence. So, we have to start by completely stripping away our modern imagination. The popular myth paints the Inquisition as this bloodthirsty, unthinking mob just executing people left and right based on pure superstition. But the historical reality? Actually, it was a highly calculating, deeply bureaucratic civil service. They were absolutely obsessed with paperwork, strict legal procedures, and maintaining total intellectual control over the diverse populations of multi-kingdom Spain.
To pull off that level of control, they operated almost like supernatural detectives. You have to think of it less like a chaotic witch hunt and more like a massive, terrifyingly efficient modern data collection agency. They didn't just burn suspected witches on a whim. Instead, they built vast, incredibly detailed case files called Relaciones de Causas. These were comprehensive, standardized trial summaries recorded by the tribunals and meticulously released every single year by this massive bureaucracy. The inquisitors cross-referenced these files, deeply studying the behaviors, claims, and confessions of literally anyone suspected of dealing with the devil.
Now, when the printing press triggered a huge information explosion in the 1450s, the Inquisition initially tried to ban entire books outright through the Index of Forbidden Books. But banning everything quickly proved totally unworkable. So they adapted. They figured out that rather than burning everything to the ground, they could exert far more power through something much subtler, the suppression of pen and ink. And this meant heavy, meticulous, localized redaction.
And we actually have stunning physical proof of this bureaucratic suppression today. Over in England, housed in the Angus Library, is a 1569 edition of the Works of Augustine. This particular book was printed in Protestant Basel and had some Calvinistic footnotes. Now, instead of destroying the holy text of Augustine, Spanish censors meticulously crossed out the offending sentences line by line, entirely by hand. Just imagine the sheer manual labor involved in doing this across an entire empire. To prove the censorship was legitimate, the authorities even signed and dated the final page of every single censored volume.
But, this obsession with tracking and suppressing magic didn't just pop up out of thin air when the Inquisition was founded in 1478, or when the Index of Forbidden Books started in 1559. It evolved from a really long, complex Iberian history. Centuries earlier, back in the 13th century, monarchs like Alfonso X were actively commissioning the translation of Arabic and Jewish occult texts, specifically to capture and control that knowledge.
And Alfonso didn't just translate magic, he legislated it. His major law code, the Siete Partidas, explicitly outlined exactly what forms of magic and divination were illicit. We're talking things like summoning evil spirits to cause death or madness. But crucially, it actually permitted and even rewarded some magic if it was used for good intentions, like casting out devils or saving crops from locusts. As you can imagine, this nuanced approach created an incredibly complex legal maze for later inquisitors to navigate.
So to get through this legal and theological maze, the Inquisition's bureaucracy developed highly specific terminology. They had to strictly differentiate between Hechicería, which was considered low-level sorcery or simple spellcasting, and Brujería, which was absolute diabolical witchcraft involving a literal binding pact with Satan. Distinguishing between those two was absolutely critical because it meant the difference between a mild punishment and a severe heresy trial.
Okay, so how did this bureaucratic obsession actually play out when someone's life was on the line? Let's look at a fascinating, heavily redacted trial transcript from the 1500s. This is the 1588 case of Vicenta Mupel. She was a 14-year-old servant girl in Valencia who found herself brought before the formidable Holy Office.
Threatened with torture, Vicenta gave the inquisitors exactly what you'd think they wanted to hear. She confessed to a full-blown diabolical pact. She claimed to have visions of saints and the devil. and confessed that for 2 whole years she'd been having intimate, carnal relations with a demon who appeared to her in the form of a man named Joan. Yes, a terrifying agent of the underworld with the incredibly mundane name of Joan.
Now, the Inquisitors didn't just gasp and immediately send her to the stake. Instead, they treated her claims with cold, intense academic scrutiny. They pressed her for visceral, highly specific details about this demonic encounter, and dutifully recorded every word of it in their transcripts. She described the physical sensations of the demon in incredible detail, stating it was neither cold nor warm, and that the demon actually tried to satisfy her. And here is where the story takes a wildly unexpected turn. Despite this completely explicit confession to what sounds like ultimate heresy, the Inquisitors actually acquitted her of diabolical witchcraft. They basically threw the demonic charges out entirely. But why on earth would this strict, supposedly merciless holy institution let a self-confessed demon lover go free?
The logic behind her acquittal is honestly fascinating, and it all comes down to that secret library. Because the Inquisitors studied forbidden magic and demonology manuals so deeply, they considered themselves top-tier experts on demonic biology. The academic texts famously documented that a real demon's touch, and specifically demonic semen, was supposed to be agonizingly cold and painful. Because Vicenta's description lacked that required coldness, they scientifically concluded her story was just a fantasy. It's a darkly comedic historical reality that their hoarding and intense study of occult knowledge is exactly what ended up saving her life.
This academic rigor had a massive geographic impact too. In northern Spain, like Catalonia, the Inquisition's bureaucratic grip was weaker, and local secular courts took charge, heavily influenced by French witch hunters, and that led to massive brutal witch panics. But down in southern Spain, like Valencia, where the Inquisition had strong centralized control, their rigorous academic standards and innate skepticism actually prevented the mass witch burning seen across the rest of Europe.
The Inquisitors in the south really needed this deep understanding because magic in Iberia was incredibly complex. Texts like the Picatrix, which was actually translated from Arabic by a Jewish scholar, highlight the region's multicultural roots. Just imagine the immense intellectual burden on these Inquisitors. They had to deeply study these dense, complicated astrological and magical texts just to figure out the difference between standard Christian heresies and the lingering Muslim or Jewish magical traditions still present in the population. This was, quite literally, the ultimate bureaucracy of the occult. By attempting to completely control the narrative of magic and heresy, this holy institution meticulously redacted, categorized, and filed away the very texts and testimonies they were supposedly fighting against. They locked the magic away in their archives, preserving it perfectly in their trial records and censored libraries. Which leaves us with a pretty profound paradox to think about as we wrap up this explainer. In their desperate, bureaucratic quest to suppress the demonic, did the Spanish Inquisitors inadvertently guarantee its survival? By studying the dark arts so closely to defeat them, they ironically became the greatest librarians of the occult the world has ever seen. It really makes you wonder what else is hiding in those pristine centuries-old archives today.